everyone, just a heads up, there's a chat session box at the bottom, and you can click on it. You can send private messages, and you can also send public messages. You can choose which route. And this is Zoom, so it's a little bit more robust than what we've been using already, which has been, Google Hangouts. So I believe that this session we will be recording. So you'll get to ask some questions, and then we'll send this out later on after we just get some clips from it. And then so to just jump right in, this is webinar number 2, and we are going to cover how to build a successful business with Anthony Tumbiolo today. Just to give you some background on Anthony, he's living in beautiful Miami Beach right now and enjoying the lovely weather every single day. And if you go and follow him on social media, you'll see all of his service-based businesses that he's built over the years. In the most recent, he had a very successful exit on a 7-year run with a company called Jakt that he built out of New York. It's a software design and development agency. Had up to about 30 employees and was generating about $4 million in annual revenue with about 20% net margin. So very successful business, started from nothing, literally from zero, and just built, by Anthony and a few of his even most recent colleagues. So to jump right in, I have a slew of questions I'm going to ask. I'd ask the group to please, hold off, or as we are going through conversation, feel free to throw the questions into the chat, and I'll start to cover those questions and moderate along the way. The more questions we get, the better, and feel free to send those in the public channel and not necessarily the private, so that everybody could see the questions as they come up. And with that, I love Anthony. If you, if you could first, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it. And I'll turn it over to you just to give a quick 30-second intro.
Yeah, so I don't know if I can make it in 30 seconds, but I'll keep it short. So quick background on me. So I was born and raised in San Diego, California. Grew up there. When I was 17, I moved to New York. Went to school at NYU there. Shortly thereafter, when I left, is when I started my company Jakt, which you alluded to. Ran that for the last 7 years, up until about 2-3 weeks ago. It was a great run, and I'm sure we're going to dive into it here. And now it's honestly a little weird, not running a business that I've been running for so many years, and now I'm on to the next phase of my life, which will involve a lot of real estate and a few other things that I'm working on.
Anthony, I'm going to take you back in history 7 years and start, kind of from the very beginning, right, where you had that decision to really, look at your path and look at it at, the longer term, not necessarily the short term. And for, at least to start up to get some good questions in at first, I'd love to know, how long and, when did you decide to build this business 7 years ago? What was it that promoted your decision to want to build Jakt?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it actually, we should probably rewind it to when I was back in San Diego. So when I was a teenager, I think I was probably 14 or 15 or something. And my parents came to me and they said, hey, need you to get a job, right? Need, make some money. And my first reaction, I don't know why. My first reaction was absolutely not. I can't imagine, because they wanted me to go get this job. I remember it at this yogurt shop down the street, and it was paying a couple bucks an hour or whatever. And I was there's no way I can possibly sit there for 8 hours a day. And I was adding it up. I was no chance. So I was I need to figure out a way to make money. Long story short, I started, that was my first taste of an online business. I started selling things on eBay. And my biggest seller was purses. So it really goes back, like, that was my first taste of like, hey, I can make my own money by running a business. And so I got a taste of it. And from that moment on, I was kind of like, hey, let me just build businesses. That's how I'll make money, right? So anyway, so I did that for a while, was making good money. And then I moved to New York, stopped that business, started another business in nightlife, ran an events business for a while. While I was in school, though, I didn't want to be running a nightlife company for the rest of my life, and I had some ideas for various products and businesses that all required custom software. So up until that point, I was always building things on other people's platforms. So when I was doing the online business, I was using third-party software like eBay and stuff like this. When I did the events business, I used a platform called Ning, which was a social network that didn't require any custom programming. And so I had this idea for a product, and I was like, hey, how do I make this happen? I ended up picking up a book, this big book before there was a lot of like online resources, and I learned how to code. And when I started learning how to code, it kind of opened up my eyes to, wow, there's a lot of possibilities. And I could solve kind of any problem I wanted, or at least that's what I thought. And if I build software, it can scale infinitely. So then in my head, I was like, hey, I'm going to build a software company, some sort of SaaS company. And so I started thinking to myself, okay, what problem do I want to solve? I knew up until that point, if I didn't really care about the problem I was solving, I would do it. I was always good at making money, but I would get bored and move on to the next thing. That's what I noticed about myself. So I was like, okay, I need to find something that I really want to solve, that I want to do for the next 5-10 years. I started thinking much longer term at this point. When I was doing the other businesses, it was very short term, year, 2 years. And I was like, okay, I want to commit to something longer. So anyways, I started thinking like, okay, where do I want to go? And I just started helping other people. So being in New York, there happened to start being, it's not like San Francisco exactly, but there started being a lot of tech companies, tech startups, and I started being drawn to them because they were trying to solve problems, from the ground up, build a company. And I was like, okay, what I'm good at is monetizing things and thinking about how do you turn something into a business. But all my thoughts were now, okay, how do I build some software to help turn something into a business? And so long story short, I started helping people for free. In the meantime, I was like, hey, I'll do this while I figure out what I'm going to build. I'll help other people's companies. Ended up realizing, hey, that's actually what I really like doing, is if I work with this company, I'll indirectly then impact all of their customers, so I'll be able to impact thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people potentially like this. And so decided, hey, you know what, let me turn this into, a business. And that's when Jakt started. And that was, July of 2012.
Now, that end goal that you had, what would you say that end goal was? And did that end goal change over time as you were building Jakt? Like you came in, you started building the company, and so you had this mission to help as many software companies in the space, the tech companies in the space, and also do more than just that. But I'd imagine that even over time, possibly there was an evolution of what that end goal looked like. Is that the case, or did it pretty much stay consistent throughout those 7 years and the goalpost never changed?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it definitely changed. At times I even felt bad about it, because like I read about all these people, you see all these people like, okay, they had this vision and then they just went after it. And it's like, the reality is like, no, that wasn't me. Like, I can tell a very concise story now, and I could be like, here's the vision of it, whatever. And it could sound all perfect, but the reality is no, not at all. So when I started it, it was, hey, let's use our consulting. Let's help these other companies. Yes, we can impact other people, but really it was, hey, let's build up money so that we have funds, because I had no money at this time. Let's build up funds so that we can then build our own SaaS company. So that was still my plan for the first year, like year and a half.
Right.
And then once we started getting, some traction in the sense of we had people realizing, hey, you guys are pretty good at this. We got more demand. We weren't even looking for it. It started coming to us, and we had a decision, to make. This was maybe a year and a half in. It was like, hey, there's two choices here. We either say we're not taking on more work, and let's build a SaaS company or something else, or let's grow this agency because we have something here. And so that was one pivot point. Then we decided, okay, let's grow this thing, right? And then along the way, over those years, it was like, okay, where do I want to build this thing? How big do we want to make it? Do we want to actually start spinning out products later? So along the way, every, couple years, there's probably a pivot point in there. I mean, hell, I even thought then at one point we would that I would own this thing for the rest of my life. I was like, hey, I have this business, it works. The one thing that I thought would never change was software is going to affect all the various industries in the world, at least as long as I'm alive. So as long as I have a software company, like I'm good, right? And so then not even changed, right? Now I don't own it. So yeah, I mean, definitely along the way things have changed for sure.
So in that evolution, so you in the first year and a half, you were doing essentially like almost, it sounds like consulting, right? Where you were coming in and just more consultative to a business. You would perform consultative services for the business, but it wasn't a formalized agency yet where you were, servicing at scale. So when did you start to see the money, the success, in that transition, or maybe even prior or, post that transition? But when did you start seeing that success?
Yeah. So yeah, in the early years, I mean, hell, 8 months leading up to it, right? I was working for free for people because I didn't see it as this is going to be my business. It was like, hey, I just really like doing this. And that's now, in hindsight, years later, now that's a trigger for me. It's like, hey, if I'm doing something so much for free, let me wrap a business model around it, because if I do it for free, if someone's going to pay me, for sure I'm going to do it, right? And so the first 8 months was that. Then we were really consulting. It was me and one other. There was two of us. We were consulting with people. We were helping a lot with business strategy, product strategy. My partner at the time was a software developer as well. So then it was like, I would do front end development, he would do back end. We started, working on things. We were making, decent money. And I got excited in year one because I didn't have any money at the time. We start making money, and we start pulling out some money. So like, okay, it was the first time I literally had more than like $500 in my bank account, right? Huh. And then what happened was about a year and a half in, when we decided, okay, we need to build this thing, we threw in all our money back in. So we went broke again. It was like, okay, we need runway, because if we're going to hire people, we need, retained earnings in the business, right? So then it went on a series for probably the next 5 to 6 years, up until maybe about 6 to 9 months ago or something. From a financial standpoint, I was completely broke. Anything I had, even though the business was making money and the profit was technically mine, I left everything in the business. I kept, paid my business partner, the government, and then left everything in the business. And so I was broke. So, from a financial standpoint, if you look at like how successful was I, and, I was worse off than anyone I employed, for sure. Right.
You felt like you had, really the world on your shoulders. You have a ton of responsibility. You're building a business. It has employees. But in the end, you're eating, budget meals, and, you're hoping that you don't overdraft or bounce a check, at the end of the year.
So that's what I felt that, as the business grew, I felt a very large responsibility to, then start having employees with families, people that this was their sole, household income right through this. And then it was them. And then as I got closer to people, them, their significant other, their kids, all of that. Right. And so I just couldn't, for me, I was like, okay, there's two senses to it. Like one, I wanted to reinvest because economically, I thought it was the best decision.
Right.
of like, well, I'll just keep multiplying it. And then two, I felt a very big sense of responsibility to people's livelihood. So it's like, hey, I can't be taking out all this money when it could, that could mean I might have to lay someone off or something, because I'm selfish with this. And so it wasn't until it got to the point where I was like, okay, I actually think it's okay. I can actually take some money out, and we're going to be fine, that I started, taking out money.
Did you ever feel that you were investing, there's a common pitfall, right? Where you have this investment vehicle, whether it be real estate, whether it be a business, and sometimes, most times, the business may not be going so well. And so what you tend to see is that business owner will throw money into the business and they'll continue to reinvest their money into the business. But, is that a good approach to a sinking ship? Can you get your business out of the hole if you're seeing that it's not going the route that you're hoping, or that you were hoping that it would be going? Mm-hmm. Or should you fail quickly and then pivot to something else? What do you think, given that? And then I'm going to take a few questions in the queue.
Yeah. So my approach has always been, I want any kind of business that I run to make money from day one, right? From when, and really that's because anything I started up until that point, like I had no money, right? So like there was no choice. It had to make money. There was no extra resources to throw in. Right. When I was starting Jakt, like there was one option: make money, and I had no credit card debt. I had student loans at the time, right? So I actually had a negative net worth. Right. So like, most people, or not most, but some people will go into debt, take out loans. I was like, no, right. Nothing. So like, I will only spend the money that I have. And so that gave me a really good financial, grounding and system to where I always structure the business where it could be going bad, but we never lost money in a year. Like if you look at our tax returns for every year, there was always a profit, and always a minimum of a 6-figure profit. That's the way I would run the business.
Is that since year one?
Yeah. So year one, for example, we did we had 250,000 in revenue.
Wow.
Right, and we didn't really like take any money, right? So profit. Year two, we broke $1 million, in revenue in year two, and since then we've always been above $1 million. And so if you just run the financial system really well, we were always turning a profit. So that was very key, because I want to invest in something that's making money. Sure, some months, we might make less money, or even in some months we would break even. But it was very intentional in the sense of like, I knew it was happening, or I knew I could adjust things. Or if we were going to lose money, it was like, okay, we're going to lose here, but we're going to make here. So, but to answer your question, like throwing money at something that's going down, I mean, I never did it, because I was like, I'm only going to, run a business that will make money. Now that said, I have put in money into other things that weren't working. So as I started going, I was like, okay, I'm going to spin out this business. And funny enough, when you start spinning out businesses and you just try to throw money at it, essentially doing the opposite of how I built this business.
Right.
There were times that, even it was a year and a half ago, last year, I threw in 70,000 into a business and I lost all of it. Gone.
Wow.
Right. And that was because I was but I reached a point where it's like, okay, I had to cut it off. Yeah. Right. And there's a whole lot of learnings I had from it, but I essentially went away from all my principles on how to run a business. But I did definitely put a line in the sand of like, hey, if something's bleeding, it's a hard thing to know of like, hey, when, should you keep throwing money at it? Should you not? And I have my own kind of rules of thumb around it, but like, no, some people just keep going and going and going, when really it's like, okay, you could cut it and put your money in somewhere else. It's just a capital allocation question. Once you have some money, where are you going to put it? Are you going to put it over here or over here? And when you start bringing emotion into it, into business decisions, that's when you can make some poor choices, because your job as a steward of of the business and of the capital is to make the best capital allocation decision. And if you're chasing after an emotional decision, you can lose all your money. So it's something you have to balance.
So the two big points I hear there, Anthony, is one, make sure that you remove emotion from decisions, especially when it comes to business. And then two, make sure that the business you're building is immediately able to monetize, right? And so would you say that the immediate monetization is going to be on the basis of your ability to service that customer quickly with whatever skill set you have, I guess, built in your toolkit, or is it going to, did you have to learn something? Did you have to go and take time to learn something for a while to then go and service customers?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think it boils down to one thing: sales, right? Like, can you sell? So like,
Right.
100%, I think a business should make revenue from day one. Whenever I've lost money in business, it's because I abandoned this principle. That 70,000 had no revenue coming in, right? So yes, revenue coming in, which equates to sales. If you can't sell, it's very, very difficult to build a bit. Like, I don't know how you can build a business without sales. There's no revenue, right? And so it's either you or someone you know needs to be able to sell. And that's the way I always thought about business. And that's where, there's different types of businesses, right? Service businesses, there's VC-backed businesses, different business model, right? Where you don't need to necessarily sell from day one. You have to sell VCs or angels, right? So you're always selling in one way or another. But if you want to run a business that's generating revenue and where you're in control, and it's producing a profit, you have to be able to sell. And then you have to be able to deliver the service and what it is. But what it really comes down to is, can you solve someone's problem, right? Like that's what, in general, when I've done anything, especially with Jakt, it was, okay, can I help someone solve a problem? And if I can, I will get paid for it. It's very simple, actually.
You mentioned something earlier at the beginning of this that you started to find ways to just help other people, right? And the more people you help, that just really at the end of the day, the more return to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's fundamental whenever you're starting a business, right? You went 8 months without even turning a profit. So given that you helped a lot of people along the way, and you really have to keep that in mind whenever you're building a business, is how many people can I help? The more people I will help, the more people I do help, the more return likely for myself and for my business. Whereas I think many people today are looking at the moonshot, right? They're looking to build the next Uber app. They're looking to build the next, rocket ship, and that's great. But you can go. I mean, even those companies are not profitable, right? They're all. They're not profitable, and they likely may or may not ever be, right? And so, I think when you're an individual, what it sounds like is focused on helping people and help them with whatever service you can fulfill. And in that most immediate, you would actually monetize faster. And so if you compound on that, it sounds like over time, which is what Jakt did, and relatively really, really fast, you were able to compound into a multi-million-dollar business and service many different clients. So we'll go into some of the questions. Fiona asked.
Can I say one thing really quick? Just because I think you hit on a really important point.
Go for it.
Just helping people. That's not something just to even do in the early days. Like it's every single day for the rest of your life, right?
That's right.
Like, that's a principle I have, and it was never. And there's a key point though. It's not. I wasn't like, well, if I do this, I'm going to get this.
Right.
Like the idea, it has to be genuine, and you're helping people, you're giving, and that person may give you something back, or they may not. You have to be totally fine with it. And so the cool part is it compounds over time. So once you start helping hundreds of people every year, over and over and over, like then, after years and years of it, and I'm only, let's call it 7-8 years in now, it's already compounded like crazy. Then in 20 years and 30 years, right? Like, so it's a very good principle, and it's something I live my life by. So that's why I just wanted to say, one, I agree with it, and just really emphasize that.
It's critical. I think it was Robert Kiyosaki in his book Rich Dad Poor Dad. He just put in there, like, the more people you help, the more the universe will return to you, and that's. Yeah. And then he goes into more detail on why the rich aren't actually, like, they're not selfish people, right? They're actually providing like a lot for society, providing a lot for people, and they got into becoming so wealthy because they at one point early on decided to do and service and help as many people as possible, and that just evolved into a much bigger business, right? Look at the Amazons, right, of our time. Like the Jeff Bezos was one dude at one point working in a little garage, and now it's a massive organization with almost 1 million people employed there. So yeah, I mean, I think it's exactly that. That should be your golden rule in life: is how many people can I help, especially if you're going to build streams of revenue that are beyond just what you have in control of your own surroundings, which is your full-time job.
Yeah, I think anytime you meet someone, literally in my head, the second I meet someone is how can I help you? Like, how can I help this person? Even if I can't make money from it, it's not that. Literally, anytime I meet someone, how can I help them? If it happens that my business can help them, great. But if not, I'll connect them. But I know there's some questions here. You were about to get into it and I cut you off.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, we could talk about this for hours, right? This is our thing.
Yeah.
So I guess let's just high touch on Jakt. What did Jakt do? Was it a software? Was it a service? Just explain, again, like maybe 30-second, 1 minute pitch of what Jakt did.
Yeah. So long story short, it was an agency. So we were paid to help people design and build software. Right. So the way it started is like, hey, people would come there and that's, and I'm oversimplifying a little bit, but it's basically like, hey, I'll give an example. It's like, in the early days, some startup would be if some guy has an idea, he has no idea, what the business should be or how to, what software he should build. We would come in and we'd work with them to actually like build his software company. It evolved over time into then us working with large enterprises that, for example, a hedge fund would come to us and they would say, hey, like we have this piece of software that's being used by X amount of people. It hasn't, we want to improve it. How do we do that? So it's just basically like prompts, like how do we do something? So we come in and we'd figure out, okay, what's the opportunity to make this better? How do we expand from 5,000 people using it to 50,000 people using it? And then designing and building that software, and then same kind of thing with healthcare companies, whatever it is, people would essentially come to us with a prompt of like, how do we do this? And then we'd figure out, we'd dive into the problem, right? So this is where the consulting aspect was. Okay, what is the real problem we're trying to solve here? Figuring out the right solution, and then designing and building that solution, and then iterating on it because you never get it right the first time. So it was a part consultancy, and then our tools were software design and development, but it was really about solving problems.
And when you approach those clients, those startups, how did you approach them? Like what was the special sauce that allowed you to go from year one, 250,000, or even just honestly in year one, making 250,000 for a lot of people is, it's for them, it may feel like an impossibility, right? So how did you get to first approach some of those startups? What did you use? What were tactics that you used? And then how did you go about like kind of executing and solidifying that deal with that client? How did you get the deal closed?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I never actually thought of them as tactics. I was just being myself. Like I was curious. I would go to people and just talk to them. I was very curious about people's businesses. Like it came naturally to me. So it didn't start with anything related to like software, design or development, like the skills. It was, hey, talk to me about your business. Hey, what are you doing? How do you find customers? Who are your customers? So I would always start with the business, right, side of things and really understand, try to understand, what they're trying to do, ask really good questions. And through that, it starts uncovering opportunities. The way I work is I ask a bunch of questions so I can piece together, what's missing or where the opportunity is. So I would just do that with people and naturally would be like, oh, okay, well, like, what if we tested and tried this? Or what if you did this? And then people would be like, oh, like, can you help me with that? Yes, I actually can, and that's essentially how I got my first customer. And honestly, a lot of our customers, it's basically how we would get them. So, the first customer was essentially that, talking to them, hey, what about this or what about this? And they're like, oh, like, can we hire you? They actually wanted me to join full time. I said no, but I was working first off, I was working, for free with them. Like, hey, like this is fun for me. I'll help out. So I was helping them out with a lot of product strategy and business strategy stuff, doing some coding. And then they eventually wanted me to come full time, working with them. But to me, it was never, it was like, oh, like now we'll pay you more. And like, first off, I was like, I was already working for free. It wasn't about the money. Right. That's not why I was actually doing it. It's because I really enjoyed it. But then once I realized, okay, this is what I want to turn into my business, then I was like, okay, great. I have someone who wants to hire me full time. I'm going to turn this into a contract. Right. So that was actually what I did. I flipped it and I said, hey, I won't join you, but you can now hire my company. And there's someone else that, I'll bring in someone else, that eventually became my first partner. I'll bring him in if you give us this much money. And so what started as wanted me as a full-time employee turned into our first contract. And that was how we got the first customer.
Now, did you ever think that, back at NYU, and Mohit asked a good question here, around just like becoming a full-time employee versus running a business? You're talking about how you decided, against taking a full-time job and being converted and sticking with your guns and sticking with your goal to build Jakt. But did you ever, prior to that life, did you ever come to a point where you said, you know what, maybe I should be a full-time employee?
Yeah, good question. So not really. I just couldn't, and whether this is true or not, I can't say because I've never actually been a full-time employee. But in my head, I painted a picture of how awful it was to go work at a corporation. So I went to NYU, I was in the business school, right? So the track that everyone took was you go to a bank, right? You go to a bank, maybe some people go to an accounting firm, whatever. And so in my head, that's all I could visualize. Man, I don't want to be at a bank. I don't want to do that. That sounds miserable. Yeah. Right. And of course now I know there's many jobs that are great. I employ a lot, I used to employ a lot of people. I was trying to build a company that I would work at myself, but no, I never really wanted to have a job. I just didn't understand it. I thought I could do more. And I thought in my head, I thought I would be constrained at a large enterprise. And so I was like, hey, if that's that direction, I'm going to go the other way. Now, my parents were not happy about this whatsoever, right? They really wanted me to go get a job. They're like, no, you moved to New York, you're in the business school, go get a job. And we had fights about it so bad that actually my family stopped talking to me for like 3 years because they were so upset that I would not get a job. And now I realize it was, hey, they were really just, worried about me on like, would I be okay, not having a job. It was not common when I, in 2012, it made, it's not that long ago, but it wasn't a common thing to start a business. From my school, I was probably one of the only people from my business school that didn't take an actual job. So the only time I ever actually considered it was to make my parents, for a minute, it was like, okay, maybe I'll do this, for my parents, but like, I just couldn't do it. It ate me up so much. I was like, I know my parents want me to do this, but I know it's not what I want in my heart. Like I want to do something else. And so I was willing, and I did, I was willing to not have a relationship with my parent. I didn't want that, but that's the cost of, me doing something I wanted to do. And that was definitely hard, but that's how much, I wanted to, go a different route. And so but also on top of it, even I was like, okay, I'll entertain my parents. I'll like put in my resume. No one would freaking interview me. I couldn't get a damn interview. Anyways, maybe they knew, right? I remember I went to one interview, and like I failed it. It was awful. I never went to another interview again. And so, no one would even interview me. And, then that was like my junior year. or something, junior, senior. I forget the timing on it. But I planned to go back to get a computer science degree, because once I started coding, I was like, oh, maybe I'll get a CS degree, thinking like that's what I needed, to learn how to code. I remember I was taking a couple classes, and then without me knowing, my mom sent in a bunch of applications to banks. I didn't know she did it. I started getting interview requests from banks. I'm like, I didn't ask for interviews. And it turns out my mom applied to like 20 different places. I got 18 out of the 20 interviews, because now I had like CS on my resume.
Right.
And but I didn't go to any of them. And so I think I got kicked out of like the NYU program for getting a job, and my mom was so upset and all this. But that was as close as I ever got to to having a job.
I want to touch. I mean, that's such a great story, and it's such a good. Like, I think it's a really good topic of discussion to hit on. In that, like, you probably experienced a lot of negativity, a lot of doubt and fear starting your business, both from maybe just yourself, and also from others around you, and even sounds like even some of the closest people to you in your life doubted, and feared that you were going to be successful, or that your business was going to be successful, or that you were going to stick with it. When did you, like, how did you gauge success for yourself when you were building Jakt early on, when the negativity around you and the fear and the doubt was pressing on you? How did you gauge success there, and how did you keep a clear mind? And also, I think, like, how did you gauge failure too? Because with one comes the other.
Yeah, it's a good question. So, once I had all those 18 interviews, I was like, okay, I could probably get one of these jobs. Hell, I even had like hedge funds reaching out to me, and I was like, okay, I can make, the starting salary back then for like a bank and all that was at least 70K and all of that. And I see that, but in my head, in that first year, when I wasn't really making money, and even after that, I was making way less than all that. But my gauge of success was not how much money. It was, am I happy? And can I do this every single day? And so I was, in that first year when I was figuring things out, first year, 2 years, when, I had no money still, and I was making nothing, on a super tight budget. I see my friends that we just went to school with, they're getting the nice apartments and essentially spending all their money, right? And I'm like, with nothing. Oh, hey, you want to go out for a drink? No, I have no money. Oh, you want to do? No, right? Didn't do anything, was just there. But I was so happy because I was able to wake up and do what I wanted every single day. And then you see everyone. I saw my friends, they're going out, they're getting wasted. Why? Because they're doing something they don't like. Right. It's not to say it was all of them, right? Like, some people love their jobs and whatever it was. But to me, I was just like, my gauge of success is like, am I happy? If I'm happy and I'm liking what I'm doing, that's all that matters, right? Because if I did something that I didn't want to do just for someone else, right, to make someone else happy, it wasn't making myself happy. So like, that's how I judged it. It was like, my success was like, hey, I'm free. I felt free, even though I had no money, right? I felt free, and like my mind was free. So that was success. And like, from a failure standpoint, from the early days, the failure would have been like doing something I didn't really want to do. Like, failure would have been, hey, what could have been? I don't like to live with like what could have, right? That's even why now I'm going in a different direction. I don't like to, I don't want to ever regret anything, and I don't. But failure would be, to me, and I definitely went through periods of failure of like, being unhappy, right? Doing something you don't want to do, because of some reason that is not you, some external reason, or you need someone's validity or whatever it is. That to me is a failure, because we only have so many years here. You have one life. It's like, you might as well do what you want. And I didn't know this was going to be the thing that it ended up doing well financially for me. I did believe at some point, and it's still early, and I have a long ways to go. But I was like, I know, if I firmly believed if I do what I want, the money will come.
Right.
Right? I had this high school teacher. He told me, chase the learning and the grade will follow.
Yeah.
Right. And so I translated that. It stuck with me. And I thought, well, chase what I want to do, and the money at some point will come. Maybe it will come in a year or 2 years. But at that point, it wasn't looking like the money was going to come for a while, but I was happy. Right. And so whenever I've started doing things for the money solely, I also realized my happiness went down. And so that's like the guiding principle is like, do what, if I would do something for free, then I have confidence. I can wrap a business model around it. But if it's painful, right? If it's suffering, then I need to stop doing it. Like that's a failure. I don't want to live life suffering. And I don't mean physically, although when you're suffering, mentally and emotionally, it can affect you physically.
That's right.
I don't want to live a life where I'm suffering. And there was many times throughout the business where, I lost sight of that. Times where for months on end, I was really suffering, where I went through periods of drinking very heavily, on the border of like alcoholism, where it's months and not every night numbing myself and stuff like that. Yeah. I couldn't see it, but like that was a failure. I believe that was like a failure, but I'm careful with the way I say failure because I believe there's a lesson to be learned in everything. And so it's, hey, I went through this and I needed to go through it and I learned from it. So whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, like I don't really assign right and wrong to things anymore. It's like, hey, this happened. Okay, I had a lesson to learn and I moved on. So that's kind of my relationship with, I guess, success and failure.
It's probably like a really interesting correlation here, how like your buddies were, they were probably doing like 40 hours a week, and they were, probably hating their job, going out and then drinking, and taking the weekend off to decompress, to then go back to it again. But yet, and they were making a lot of money doing that, but then you weren't making much, but yet you were probably working through the weekend most weeks.
Oh yeah, there was it was 7 days. I remember this one time, my friend, I was actually just at his wedding, and I remember it was like year 1 or 2 of the business. I was at home, and he needed to stay with me. He moved to San Francisco, and then he moved back to New York, and he was in between places. Like, hey, can I stay with you? And this is I was, yeah, of course. And he was talking, and he had a good job in San Francisco, paid really well. Comes back to New York, paid really well, and he goes, hey, I've do you know where I should put I have $10,000. Where should I put it? I was like, yo, I've never even seen that kind of that money saved up, and I remember I was like, wow, these people, you have some money, but also he was working that kind of thing. He's like, I don't, wasn't happy at his job and all that. Meanwhile, I'm working 80, 100 hours a week, but smiling, Right. And I was like, okay, this is like, it was weird for me to like wrap my head around it, but I was like, okay, you have money and you're not happy. I don't have money and I'm happy. Right. Like, what's up with that relationship? It's an interesting one. And I had to be careful though of, hey, well, if you have money, you're not happy. Like the relationship with money was an interesting one. And for a long period of time though, it actually hindered me because I associated having a lot of money with also like, almost like that I won't be happy if I have any money. And so at times like I would do things that would prevent me from making money and stuff like this to keep in that like happy spot. So anyways, I'm touching on a few different things, but yeah, it was interesting. I would work 80, 100 hours easily, making way less than anyone else.
Well, it's yours, right? You're building something that's yours, that you can control it. I think the biggest thing whenever you're building a business, like for example, with mine in real estate, the control factor is what's so important. Like speaking about, and I speak to a lot of folks that reach out to me because I challenge the 401k, right? Like the philosophy of a 401k and getting a 401k. What do you think about a 401k? Just a quick question on that.
Yeah, I get asked that a lot, especially as a business owner. When I was, hey, can we open up a 401k, or like, do you have a 401k? Or my accountant, this is the best one, the accountants. You should really put money in the 401k. We'll save you all this money, right? I don't believe in a 401k. I want control. I want control of my money. I want to spend it, in the manner in which I see fit, invest it in the manner I see fit. And I believe that, my belief is that I'll put money to work better. than a 401k. So I don't have one. I don't plan on ever having one personally. And yeah, I want control, whether it's in business, I liked having control of my own destiny ultimately, right? If the business succeeded or it failed, it was all on me, right? Like I like that sense of responsibility, and I also like that control there. It's not for everyone, for sure. Some people, don't want that much responsibility, because it is a lot of responsibility, especially once you have employees. But it comes down to, hey, I would rather be there in control, and that includes with where I spend my money and 401ks.
How did you pick up on opportunities along the way? Because clearly you did really well with finding opportunities, maybe solutions to better improve your business and scale it faster than most were able to do in just such a short period of time. So what is it like? What was the secret to your success with finding those opportunities and captivating on those opportunities as they came around?
Yeah, so I'd say a big one is curiosity. I love connecting dots on things, so I'm always listening. Whether it's in conversations that my employees were having, customers were having, online, books that I'm reading, I'm looking at like how things mesh together, and then seeing where opportunities are, and then testing that idea, and then iterating on that. So I tested, okay, well that didn't work. Great. So like life, business, and then really life is a whole series of, okay, I'm going to test this idea I have, or this assumption I have, and really being okay with not being right. Like this was a big one that I had to learn. I had to remove my ego.
Yeah.
My ego was getting in the way a shit ton. Right. A lot of times I didn't want to ask for help, or I didn't want to say I didn't know the answer, or whatever it was. I had to remove that. And that's when I started really growing the business. Because for the first like 3 to 4 years, we were growing. There was opportunities there, but I was trying to figure out everything on my own. Right. And it was once I started, I hired an executive coach. I made it, hey, I don't know everything, and that is okay. Right? Like that was the big one for me. It's like, hey, it's okay that I don't know the answer, and it's okay to ask for help. So then I started learning even more. I love learning. And I was like, okay, now I'm going to just be a child again. Let me go back to learning. Because once I started building the business, I had employees, I started dressing different. I was like trying to be a CEO of this shit. I had no idea what I was doing. And I thought I had to like play this part, and I stopped being me, which is a very curious person, someone who loves to learn, who doesn't have an ego around things. And so then, then I was like, hey, who has been where I want to be? Let me learn from them. Not saying I'll do everything that they do, but let me ask them questions. Maybe I like this, whatever. And then I started learning. Okay, I had to start learning different things. So what got me here wouldn't get me to here, and that's what I didn't grasp. That I was like hitting a ceiling, and I didn't understand why. Right? And it was like, okay, well, yes, this will get you from point A to point B, but that same thing won't get you to point C. And so it was understanding that. And now I realize that it's like, okay, if you're hitting a ceiling on something, it's because maybe what got you there won't get you the next step. And that's okay. It's a natural progression. It means, okay, now you need to make your next evolution of growth. And so that's how then I started seeing, okay, that's an opportunity for growth. Let me talk to certain people, and then let me try this next phase. So that's kind of how I saw it, always being curious, removing ego, and always have a growth mindset and a learning mindset. And then really reestablishing, like, I don't care what other people think. All I care is that we find, the right answer, not that I'm right. So,
the curiosity approach goes hand in hand with the know your customer approach, right? What you kind of messaged to us before, in that you'd go in and you'd kind of take a different perspective than probably most other salespeople that were coming in and trying to sell a product or service to them. They were coming in just to beat something down their throat, whereas you were coming in and saying, hey, I want to be a partner to you guys, even if it's free. How can I help? I think.
Go ahead.
No, I just think that that's a really good point, and it aligns to the curiosity piece. And do you think that combination you know, had you know, being those two effects, like, did that propel you? Do you think is that like that mindset is what really fundamentally changed the game for you?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I really, and this is a strong word, not hated, but like I had a very strong aversion to sales
Right.
and networking, right? Because I saw it, when I was at NYU and we would go to like business networking events. It was so transactional and so like it repulsed me. I was like, oh, I hate this.
Right.
And then I in my head I had this idea of like sales as like, the used car salesman, or I see these people and I'm like, man, I can see you guys don't want, actually care about anyone here at these networking events. You just want, a job, or you want something, and I just didn't like it. And so I never actually saw myself as a salesperson whatsoever. I would just go in and just like, okay, let me see if I can help this person. So I never got nervous with sales because I never felt I was selling. Because I actually go into every call, even when people inquired into the business, I was on the call. I'm like, let me see if I can help this person. That's how I start every call, anything I do, whether it's a sales call, or the first time you and I met. Right in my head, when I'm getting on the call, my goal is like, if I have to help this person somehow by the end of this call,
Right.
whatever, I don't know how, right? And so it was never a sale for me. And if it happened that I could help them and we could sell to them, great. So that mindset though did set me apart from other people, because then I was competing against salespeople, right? And so when you're selling, all you care about, or if you're like, some people, they're like, okay, I need to get them here, I'm gonna like use these tactics to sell them. Meanwhile, then you have someone like me come in and I'm just curious. I'm asking real questions about the business. You can tell I really give a shit about your business.
Right.
Then you start trusting me and you want to work with me if I can actually help. So, then you combine that with actually having, things that could actually help someone, knowledge, real, I could actually code and I could, do things that actually help people. And so it's like, okay, this guy is not just a salesman, he's a practitioner,
Right.
right? Because for years, I was also doing the work. I was doing things, so I could speak from experience. I wasn't just bullshitting people.
Right.
I was speaking from like, oh, hey, when I did this and I did this to this business, here's what happened, right? And so yeah, I mean, everything was very genuine. It's always like that. And anytime I feel like salesy, like I can't do it. It's very hard for me I can't sell something I don't truly believe in. Put it that way, because I suck. I'm actually probably an awful salesman. If you're like, hey, sell me this thing, and I don't actually believe it's good, like I will suck. I can't do it.
And most people, that's like, you told me this one time, and I'm gonna, because of time, I'm gonna try to condense our last like 6-7 minutes here. But you told me one time that there's the three layers of a successful business, right? There's the client piece, there's the client management piece, so going out and getting those clients and managing those clients. There's the fulfillment piece, which is, really backing up what you got from the client and an execution on that. And then there's the operational piece, right? And so that operational piece is kind of like that fundamental layer. So let's go forward into today, right? When you and I met, your business, you hadn't sold it yet. Your business was already automated to a point where you were in Florida, your business was operating, and you'd extracted yourself from that business. You built up something over the last 7 years that now you no longer had to physically manage.
Mm-hmm.
How did you do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wish I could say it in 2 words. Here's the magic pill, but I'll give you the quick background. And by the way, I'm happy to go over. If people want to ask a few more questions, I have time. But yeah, how did I do it? So about 3 to 4 years in, and this is what we were talking about right before this call. We hit a really rough point. So within the span of a couple months, half my team left, and then all of our clients left except one. Right, so shit was broken. Yeah. Right, like we're down. I have now at this point, there's 6 of us left. We were at like 15 people before then. Hell, more than half leave. We're at 6 people. We have one big customer floating it for a month. They don't know this, and after the fact, they found out. Right, and I'm trying to keep it together, and I'm like, trying to instill confidence in the team, like we're gonna be fine, all that, right? And I didn't say it like that, but just like a very assuredness, right? behind the scenes, I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, what just happened here?
Yeah.
Like, I can't even imagine, how did we get here? Right. And so at that moment, what I realized is I didn't actually have a business. I was treating it very much like when I did my online, selling purses business, which was I treated everything as just an inanimate object. And I was like, okay, I'm going to sell something. I'm going to provide something. I'll make a margin. Right. And I hadn't built up an actual business that could run without me. I took pride up in that point of like, the business needs me to survive. Because I was like, that's what it means to have a business. In my head, I was like, okay, then it's like, I'm so self-important and all this shit.
Right.
And then I realized, one, I don't actually have a business because it can't operate without me. Right. I just created a job for myself. Right. And I felt the least free person there. I was like, everyone else can leave, but if like, if everyone leaves, then I have to service the clients and all this, like I could lose all my money, all of this. Right. So like, I can't leave. I'm trapped. I don't have a business. I hadn't taken like an hour off. I was still at that point doing 80, 100-hour weeks. Right. Like up in that point, this was 3-4 years in, right. Nonstop. I was dealing at the same time with a lawsuit. Right. There's all this shit going on. Right. And I'm like, okay, I have to keep working too, because I have this lawsuit that I need to pay off. I have to pay out someone. So I'll have no income. So anyways, I was gonna, I made a decision. I was like, okay, I'm either going to shut down the business and move on to something else. Hey, it's been a nice run. I'll walk away. I'll have some money that I can pull out of the business. Yeah. At that point, probably I could have left, maybe had like 200K or something.
Right.
And been like, okay, hey, I have some runway. Let me take a few months off and I'll do something else.
Right.
Right. And I thought to myself, I was like, okay, well, what if I do that? What am I going to do? And the answer kept being, I would start this business again. So then it was like, okay, if that's really the answer, I have something here. It's basically like a new business already because I lost everyone. Right. Except I have a little bit of a foundation here. Why don't I let me build this business? But I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I have to change everything. I have to start over essentially. And I have to change it. And so I laid out some like principles of like, hey, I'm only going to, I need to be happy every day. It can't rely on me. I need to build a great team. People and culture is going to be very important. I started reading about businesses. I was like, okay, what made businesses really work? Right. And I was reading about people who built really large companies. And all I kept reading about was people and culture. That's it. That's all that matters in business. And I was like, wow, I missed that the entire time. Right. I thought it was I had to sell, I had to provide, and I would make the margin. Yes, you need that to get off the ground, but that's not how you really build a company. Right. It's about people and culture, right? And then once that clicked, that was the first thing I worked on. Let me build a really good culture, which I at the time had thought it meant going, go-karting and drinking beer. Literally, right. Took people go-karting and drinking beer. Like that's what I thought. I was like, guys, we're like doing culture, right? At the time, I'm like 24. Something like that. I had no fucking idea, right? And so once I started reading, okay, what does culture mean? I literally read, found books. What does it mean, right? And then I started realizing, hey, it means actually, it has nothing to do with the beer and all this stuff, right? Which, by the way, in tech culture, which I was servicing some of these customers, that's what I see.
Right.
Like, oh, it looks so fun. Like everyone seems so happy when in reality, like, no. And when it clicked, because I was like, hey, everyone seems really happy. We're ending the workday drinking beer together. But then you all just left. So I was like, yeah. It can't be that. I just, you were happy with some beer, right? Who wouldn't be happy having a beer, right? And so I realized, hey, actually the foundation of culture is having really strong core values, right? Real core values that everyone believes in and everyone is held accountable to. So I had to start shaping that. And so anyways, I started building, the culture, which was great. It took a while to like really change it because whether you build a culture intentionally or not, it's happening, right? Whether you know it or not, there is a culture. It just may not be something you like, right? So I started building a culture that I would want to be at myself. I was scared to be a leader up until that point. If someone, wasn't performing well, I made an excuse for them. It's okay or whatever. Or if they would talk bad about a client, I wouldn't say anything, right? So that I was not being a good leader because I tolerating something means you think it's acceptable. right?
Yeah.
It's just as strong as saying something. So anyways, culture was good. Then I had to find the right people as well, because not everyone fit that culture. So over time, more people left. And then I had to bring in people that would fit that, the people in the culture. And then the final step, I got to that point. I was like, okay, we have something here. We have great people. We have a great culture. Things are starting to happen. But then it was the next step, which was systems thinking. This is when I got introduced to this and understanding, okay, my role is actually to build. I started seeing business, a company as a machine.
Okay.
So I started separating what I called business and a company. I was like, I need to build a company. And a company is something that can live on without me. That was my goal. Okay, how do I do that? Right? I need the right people. I need the right culture. But then I need the right systems. And so my job became the architect. I was like, hey, I loved working. People ask me, do you miss working on actual project work? I said, yes, because, I love solving problems for companies. But then the company became my biggest product to date, the most challenging product. And so I took a step back and said, okay, what does this machine look like? How do I architect it to work without me? So that became my guiding principle of like, can I make this? Wouldn't it be really cool if everyone here actually didn't need me?
Right.
Right? And so that was my target. And so it took me a few years, all in. That was probably 2015. It took me a couple years to get there for sure.
Right.
Right. And so when we had met, it was at the stages where I was probably doing a few hours a week on the business, and then the last 3 months before it was acquired, I was basically doing nothing. I was there, and I used to think that would be a bad thing, but it was really the best thing. It meant it was self-sufficient. It could run without me and make money without me and grow without me, and the culture was there. Wow. Right? It would evolve without me. Right. And so I was there for more of a long-term vision strategy, and it was still top down in the sense of I still had to instill the culture and hold people accountable to that, but the day-to-day didn't require me. And, and then once it was there, I kind of like got to the point, I was like, okay, I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. It happened. And then it also made it easy. So then once it got acquired recently, I stepped away, I'm not involved. Right. That was a big reason. I had chances to get acquired, in the past, but it all required me to stay because it was so dependent on me. Right. I was the least free person. They're like, we won't take this unless you come with it. Now this time they're like, you can come, but like, you don't have to. Right. Because they could see that it was running without me. If anything, they actually wanted all the people on my team because they're the ones. I was like, look, they're the ones running it, not me. Right. And so yeah, that's how I eventually got there.
It's amazing how you transitioned from the CEO complex of having, all the responsibility on your shoulders and then, had a massive blow to your business that almost put you into the grave. And then ultimately you failed fast in areas. You saw it as an opportunity. You captivated on those opportunities and then flipped the negative to positive and ultimately built freedom, right? You refreshed your entire business model to give you the freedom that really at the end of the day you likely deserved, right? So that's just an amazing, amazing story. I think there's some questions here. I think the first thing is for Fiona. She's asking, did you have a mentor through this? Was there people that you were learning from that were coaching you, that were guiding you through this? And what's your thoughts on mentorship, and how do you go about making decisions to find a good mentor?
Yeah, that's great. So in the early days, up until that point where I just told you, no, right? This is where I still had my ego in the way of like, I need to do everything myself. Yeah. If I can't figure it out, I don't deserve it. I had this story in my head, like all these great entrepreneurs just figured it out themselves. So I wasn't deserving of it. Right. And so up until maybe a couple years ago, I did not. Right. And then once I got over my shit, I was like, okay, I'm ready for help. So then I started working with a coach, an executive coach. And that changed my life. Honestly, I wouldn't be where I'm at today without that person. So I'm a massive believer in coaching, mentorship, right? I don't think I'll ever go. And even this is how much I believe in it. Even though I don't have the business, I'm still working with her, right? Because I believe in growth, and growth comes from, I believe, working with people who can push you, who can coach you, who can mentor you. So I don't think I'll ever go a year for the rest of my life without some sort of mentorship or coaching. Massive believer in it. It saves you time, right? It helps you see your blind spots, right? And it's something that is just, I think it's irresponsible not to have one. Is my actual take. My coach has a coach, right? Like it's something that we all truly believe in, and it took me a while to get to this point because I thought it was, to be honest, a little bit of a bullshit. Oh, you have a coach, you have a mentor, you have, okay, and so for me it became, I need though to really trust this person and believe, because there are people, mentors and coaches who do it but haven't actually been there or can't speak from experience. And for me, that was really important. So you have to be careful on who you have as your coach and your mentor,
right?
For sure. But 100% believe in it. And as far as finding one, right? My coaches and mentors that I've had over the years all came from genuine relationships. Finding people, talking to them, building a relationship, trusting them. And it's kind of one of those things where it's like, hey, I really enjoy the conversation, and hey, maybe they'll mentor me. Sometimes it's a paid thing for sure. Like my coach, I was paying. And in fact, she was even like, hey, I'll do it. I would do this for free. I had known her actually for 10 years before then. Right. Wow. She had built businesses. She was part of companies that grew to 100 million, all of these things. Right. And I knew she did coaching, and I never asked her, right, for it. And then I was like, hey, I want to do it. She's like, all right, I'll like help you. And I was like, no, I'm going to pay. And she's like, you don't have to. I was like, no. Because once you start putting money up, right, it's a different relationship. Right. Yeah. So many times when I'm doing coaching, I'll be like, I'm going to commit to you. Think of it, even whether it's a fitness coach, anyone. Right? It's like, I'm going to pay because now my money's there, right? And that's a different relationship. Now you have a commitment to me and I have a commitment to you, right? We have a relationship there. So, I'm a big believer in all aspects. And it's not that you need one for everything, right? It could be this person helps you with this person is this, right? I've had nutrition coaches. I've had fitness coaches. I've had, mental health coaches. I've had business coaches.
Yep.
Whatever it is, I'm a big believer.
Yeah, I think here we practice the same. At least me and my family, my wife, my kids, were big believers in coaches, and since day one, just putting the kids into a rhythm of constantly being coached by somebody, learning from someone, and even myself, that same thing. I also learned how to find a mentor by kind of the same situation. I had to drop my ego, right? I had to open up my mind to knowing what I did know, but then also understanding what possibly I didn't know, and then leveraging that the new knowledge that I did not necessarily have at the time, and trying to figure out how I could best find somebody that did. And in that, I looked at my immediate resources first, those that I'd built up over time, like you mentioned, this woman that you had relationship for 10 years, but didn't really have mentorship until then. I have the same thing. I think we all have that in one way or another. And if you don't, I think it's one of those things you need to practice networking, and you need to practice going outside of your comfort zone a little bit to find that person. And then again, it goes into what you were mentioning, the dynamic of paying, right? To committing to that person and showing them like, hey, I'm very much motivated by what you're teaching or what I can learn from you. But I'm going to show up, and this is why. I'm going to give you a little bit, and so I can get a lot in return. Mm-hmm. And so going into another question here. So Pablo asked, what's next, right? Like, you sold Jakt. You had a successful exit. You built an automated system. You know how to do that. but what are you going to do? What are you going to do next in your next venture?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I think I mentioned this earlier. I thought I was going to run Jakt for the rest of my life. I was like, hey, this is it. This is my thing.
Right.
And
7 years. 7 years.
yeah, 7 years. Things change. So
Rest of your life.
I'm okay with change. And it kind of got to the point where I realized, at least for myself, I could have kept growing the business for sure. I was doing well. I could have said, okay, now let me get it to 10 million or whatever. But I realized it had run its course in the sense of I learned the lessons that I wanted to learn from it, right? I took it to where I wanted to go and I was satisfied. I think that's why I couldn't let it go 3 years ago. I wasn't ready. I was like, there's more for me to learn here that I want to learn. And it's not to say I couldn't keep learning, but the rate and the things I wanted to learn, I had achieved by then, right? I wanted to learn how to build a company that runs without me, how to build a culture, how to find the right people, right? And I kept, by the way, in those like 2 to 3 years, I kept trying and failing at those things. I would hire people, wouldn't work. Try to do this, didn't work, right? And it's once I could actually remove myself, that was the test. And once it got to that point, and I wanted to hit a certain revenue number, I remember 3 years, right before all this happened, right? We were coming off our best, so 3-4 years ago, we had a really good year. We had 2 million in revenue. It was the highest we had. And then I put up a sticker on the wall. And I said, next year, we're going to do 4 million. Okay.
Nice.
So this was, and that was in 2016. You know what we did? It was one of our worst years ever since I started. We ended up doing like 1.3. We went backwards.
Ouch.
Right. And it was my goal to put, I wanted a revenue number, like 4 million, and we're going to make the Inc. 5,000. Right. And so long story short, it took me 3 years later, but on top of that, we did 4 million in revenue last year. We'll hit the Inc. 5,000 for fastest growing companies, all of that stuff. So there was revenue targets I wanted. There was accomplishments that I wanted. And then there was, I want to know how to build a company. Like everything that I wanted to do, I did. And so I was like, okay, what else is there? Right. I could keep just having this thing, but I was like, okay, it's now time for me to get really uncomfortable again and move on to something else. Take what I've learned. And, I'm still young. Let me go on to the next thing. And there was always in the back of my head, this thing for real estate. I've loved real estate since I was a kid.
There you go.
Looking at properties. I love, going with my parents and seeing the sheets of like, the price. And I was always fascinated by like, why is something priced this way? Right. So since I was a kid, I was interested in that. Then I was interested in home design and that sort of thing for a while, and fixing and flipping. And then I got interested in it from, I wanted to sell it for a while. And then I got interested in it from an investment standpoint. So anyway, that's all to say, real estate for years has been the only other thing I ever seriously considered. And I was like, okay, let me do something with that. Let me go in and let me go after real estate. Like I'm gonna change everything up, stop the company, get rid of it, and go into a new career. So what I'm doing now is I'm a child again. I'm learning. I'm very new to the real estate game. Right. The most I knew up until, let's call it 3 to 4 months ago was, things I saw maybe on TV and shit like this, and my little bit of knowledge. Right. But now I'm like, okay, I'm going to dive into real estate. So that's probably 50% of my time is real estate investing. Instead of it being a salesperson, I was like, okay, now I have some capital that I built. Now let me deploy that capital, and how can I deploy it in real estate to really make my money work for me? Because up in that point, it was, okay, I need to learn how to make money. Right now, my next objective is, now that I know how to make money and I've made money, how do I then invest that money? Right. Besides investing in my business over and over again, right? How do I invest that money and really make that money work for me? So that's a big interest. And I've decided like real estate is where I want to focus. So that's probably 50% of my time. And then the other 50% of my time is doing something that, not unsurprisingly, starting a little side business, which was turning something I was doing for free into a business. So that same principle of what I noticed, what was I doing for free? And it was helping other agencies. So people that were building the same type of business that I was building, I was like, I started helping people for free over the last year. I said, hey, I want to be able to do this more. let me wrap a business model around it. And so I have an online community of agency owners, which is fun. I also, by the way, I try to do that for free with people too. But until people were paying, they didn't value it and treat it well. So once I started getting people to pay, they started using it more. And so that's one thing I'm doing. And then the last thing I'm doing, which is it was a passion thing that turned into, wrapping a business model is I'm teaching a course called Finance for Agencies. And it's basically taking everything I've learned from running a profitable agency, putting it into a course and releasing it. So those are, those two things are half my time, and the rest of the time is real estate investing or trying to.
That's amazing. It sounds like, with your pre-existing knowledge with building Jakt, getting to a place where you know how to build a business, you know how to make money. Now you're going to invest that money, but you're still going to use the same methodologies that you used in building Jakt in building those new investments, right? I'd imagine you're going to take those methodologies of building this autonomous vehicle for, wealth preservation, wealth building, and you're going to use the same tactics you've used, the same strategies you've used in the past, and apply those into real estate, into this digital, this digital stream of income that you have today with your courses. Would you say that, given that, would you go back and do anything differently? Is there any regret?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'll touch on both the things. One thing, yes, I'm 100% going to apply everything, because everything I've learned in business and how to set up a company and the systems and all of that, one thing I didn't notice about real estate investing, this was a misconception I think I had, which was, okay, I'm going to buy a piece of property, just sit back and let the money come in.
Right.
I didn't think of it like a business, honestly. And then as I learned more, about the business, a lot from you, honestly, once I started putting pieces together, I was like, wait a second, this is just like a business. It's just different inputs, different components. But once I saw it as that, I was like, oh, I know how to do this. I just need to learn the different components. And then once I start really wrapping my head around, I'll just build the systems and I'll build a nice business out of it. So 100% applying those principles. So I'm very glad, right? I built one business and now I'm just going to, go off and do something else. So that's to say, when I'm thinking about it, I know a lot, about business, but I know nothing at the same time about real estate. So it's more going with that beginner mindset, but saying, okay, but I do know some things that I'll apply. And then to your second question about, or your actual question about, like, is there anything I regret? No. So I believe, when you're going through things, whether it's success or failure or whatever it is, however you frame it, like you need to go through, you were put through that situation to learn something. And so I don't regret anything, right? I made the decision I made and there was something to be learned. So I'm in a very and this was really instilled in me by working with my coach of like, hey, I don't beat myself up anymore. I used to beat myself up so bad. Why did I do that? Why did I not know this? What was I thinking? It's like, look, you didn't know. So you had to go through it and you learned. Right. And so I don't regret anything. If I could go back in time knowing what I know now, would I do things differently? Sure, because I know things differently. Right. But at that time, like, would I play out anything differently? No, absolutely not. Because that's what's made me who I am today. Right. I'm at a point. I have a very good relationship with myself. I think that's really important. Is like, I didn't have a good relationship with myself for a while. Like, I love myself, right? It sounds weird to say that, but I'm like,
you feel proud, right?
I love me. And so I like the person I am. But that's also to say, I want to grow. I want to improve. And there's a lot for me to get better at, but I'm also gentle with myself, saying, okay, it'll happen over time. Just keep working at it. It's not to say get complacent, sit on the couch, don't do anything, but it's to, hey, I have growth to happen, to do. And I'll do it. So no, don't regret anything.
last question, and then we're going to be pretty much cutting it, and we've gone over. So thank you so much for taking a little bit more time. I know it's late over there. So we'll go into the last question here, and the last question I would ask from you is, like, what would you give as one piece of good advice to the mentees in the program today that are on the call listening?
Hmm, that's a good one. One piece of advice. Um, yeah, I mean, think about, and I'm not even going to talk about business here for a second. It's like, think about yourself and make sure you're taking care of yourself, and make sure you're always thinking like, am I actually happy? And what defines happiness for me? You have to understand yourself, what makes you happy, right? And then make sure you're going after those things, right? So for me, for example, I had to. It was mentally, it was physically, it was emotionally, right? None of those things, by the way, financial was never actually a thing, right? It's interesting, like that's an important component, but like that that wasn't required for me to be happy, right? And sometimes I tie myself to that, and so it's just make sure you're really thinking about what makes me happy, and taking care of yourself, because then from there you can do anything. Like if you're happy every day, then you've already won. Like you've started out the gate winning. So then anything above it is just a sugar, on top. And how I really know that is because, back when I had no money, no nothing, right? I was super happy. And that's when I started thinking, I was like, wait a second, now I have money, and not like, not crazy amounts, but like I remember even 2 years in, when I almost shut down the business, I had more money than I ever had at that point, ever. I never even seen a couple $100,000 in my bank account. I have that, and I'm miserable. And I'm like, what is going on, right? And it's because I wasn't putting my happiness first. And so that's when I started really learning. Okay, I need to make sure I'm happy, and if I've done that every single day, then I win. And I'm not perfect every day, but I always revisit that. I'm like, okay, let me adjust. What is making me unhappy? What is suffering? And so that's what I would say. If like, try to do what actually makes you fulfilled, every single day.
I think it's so funny and interesting how you bring this up, the point of happiness. I thought about that early on at 18, 19 years old as well, where I was like, man, am I going to be happy working for the next 30 years or 40 years of my life? In fact, I had a grandfather that was an entrepreneur. He built his own business, and his advice to me before he passed away was, you should go get a job with the government, because if you go get a job with the government, you can be there for 20 years and you can retire and you can have your pension and you can live well. And just the thought of that scared me into the complacency and just like the lack of potential that I was going to utilize, that I could produce in my life. And I was worried that I was going to give that up. And I did something extreme. I chose absolutely not to listen to that when I'd listened to him on almost everything else. And I went against the grain, and I just said, well, how can I build something so that in that same period of time, in the next 20 years, I'm not working, right? And that was what motivated me early on, and that was what caused happiness to me. It was knowing that in the future, I wasn't going to have to work in order to live and live well and have prosperity. And so it seems like there's some overlap there.
No, there's that, and I think another point to that, just to piggyback on that, like with happiness, there's another thing, freedom, right? So freedom to me was very important. I don't like, being told what to do or whatever. And freedom comes in many aspects. There's financial freedom, right?
Right.
Mental freedom, right? And we're, lucky enough, and I realize this. Look, born in the U.S., white male born in the U.S. Like I was given a lot, right? There's a lot of freedoms that I do have, and it's okay if I'm. Let me just make sure that I'm free every day, and whether you know it or not, you can be influenced by other people or doing things you don't want. You're not free. We're in a free country, but we're not free. And so to me, that was always like, okay, make sure I'm free every day, whether that's financially or whatever it is, but really mentally free, and then you're actually super free, and you can do whatever you want. So there's that, and then also the last thing I would say is make sure there's something that is driving you, because if there's nothing driving you, like you'll just kind of go through life and there's no like purpose or meaning to it. And it can change over time. Like my purpose for years was, all right, I'm gonna build this company at this point. I'm gonna take care of all the employees. I'm gonna do it. And that's why I woke up every day. Right. And then when it's like, okay, like that no longer inspires me, that was another reason why I changed the business. Hey, I'm going to go do real estate because now I have a new challenge. I have a new something else that wakes me up, that's exciting, because it's also, hey, if, say you accomplish one goal and say you go and you're financially free, right? Like yourself, you're like, hey, I don't have to work anymore. Right. But then what do you do? If you literally don't have to work, then what?
Right.
Sit on your couch and do nothing all day?
Right.
No, like, you'll literally run away. It's why people, you hear the stories about this guy stopped working at 85. By 87, he was dead.
That's right.
Because he had there was no reason to live. There was no purpose, right? So I think that's a really important thing that I think about a lot. Is like, okay, why am I doing something? And is this thing really inspiring me to where, like, and you can feel it, the difference between, those days when you can just work. It's why I'm on this call, at 10:30, it's 10:30 my time. I could keep going for 3 hours, right?
Right.
Because I'm enjoying it. It's fun. I'm doing something I want to do, and it gives me energy, right? Instead of taking away my energy. Anything that takes away my energy, I stop it. I don't do it, right? That's like a rule that I have. You're taking away energy. It doesn't feel right. Boom, gone. I don't care, right? I'll cancel if I don't want to do this. I don't care. I have no shame,
right,
in doing that. But if I'm doing something I want and it inspires me, it gives me energy, right? So that's something, having a purpose behind something. And purpose is subjective, right? It can be whatever you think, whatever I think. Like, there's no wrong to that. But making sure you have that, because then, that's why in the early days I could work 100-hour weeks. Is like I didn't want to sleep. I was too excited.
Yeah.
Like that's what I'm chasing. That high, right? It's almost a high of like that energy, and like you just want it so bad that you would do it for free. I'm like, that's what I chase. At all times.
That's what I say. Like, if you're not getting up, that's why these guys, you hear like the guys from, the executives from Twitter, the executives from Facebook, these big names, they're waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, 4:30 in the morning. And, you see these articles about how they're all going and running 6 miles in the morning. Yeah, because they thoroughly enjoy what they're doing. Like they enjoy the impact that they're making. They enjoy the responsibility that they have. It's a different level now than it is, what it was before. But
they don't have to, like Dorsey, he doesn't freaking have to work.
Right.
Want to, right? Like Bezos, right? But like, if you notice too, a lot of these guys are really good. They take care of themselves though. Why? It's because they see, and this is how I see it, business is just a sport. I think Mark Cuban has a whole book on it, like the sport of business, right? And it's like, that's when I started realizing, it's like, wow, I used to work out, for example, so I could have a 6-pack and like look really good and all this, right? Then I realized, wait a second, if I take care of my body, my mind, all of that, right? In the morning, I have a whole routine. I'm prepping myself so that I can then, play the game.
Right.
It's just a big game. And why those guys, like you said, they're waking up at 5, they're doing these things. They don't have to. Right. But they're like, hey, if I do this, then they like it. They feel good. They're prepping themselves for it. It's like, hey, I want to live 100 plus years old, and I want to be sharp and keep playing this game. And to do that, I need to take care of myself.
Yeah. Jack Dorsey, doesn't have to work, but, loves, I bet, walking into a room with 5,000 people sitting there and, applauding him for the innovations that he's created, and Square and Twitter. And so, that's that. If you're not waking up every morning, and this is from what I gather, and I feel that same thing, because if I'm not waking up motivated, then I'm probably not chasing the right goal, right? And that's a huge issue. Yeah.
And that's where, eventually got to that point. That's why with Jakt, that I realized, hey, it's not the thing that's getting me going anymore. So I need to change it. It's a scary thing. It's scary to change when you know something's working. And most people now, funny enough, when you start something, when I started the business, everyone thought I was crazy. Now everyone thinks I'm crazy to get rid of it.
to sell it. Yeah.
Like, they're like, what are you doing? Why would you do this? It's like, okay, but make yourself uncomfortable. Do what feels right to you. And I'm not seeking anyone's approval for it. I'm doing what I want to do. And that's the ultimate freedom.
Yeah, when I started buying real estate, all my buddies were buying their first primary houses, and they were taking their first earnings and they were applying it to buying their first home and doing the settle down effect, right? And I went instead and rented a lesser place than what I would probably be able to afford at the time, and squeezed me and my little, starting family at that point and into this one bedroom, and then saved all of the rest of the money while I was doing all this other stuff in real estate and working and amassing this capital. But they would call me crazy. They're like, dude, go buy yourself $1 million house and just live nice and just have the backyard for the kids and be the cliche. And I'm like, man, no, like I want to build a real estate portfolio, and that's my dream. That's my goal. And I'm not going to stop until I do it. And then it took years. And even my mom and my family, they would tell me the same thing. Like, you're crazy. Stop wasting money and stop sitting on money too, put it to work, do things. And eventually, now in the most immediate, where I've been promoting more of my documented rehabs and showcasing like the transactions that I've performed, these guys are like, they're asking me questions, right? They're like, how do I get in? How do I start? How do I do this? Like, and I'm sure you're getting the same thing. Like, hey, dude, how can I start a business like you?
Yeah, no. I mean, people along the way, once they started, first off, everyone thought I was crazy. Then you start seeing a little bit of success. Then everyone starts giving you more advice. Everyone's like, I can't tell you how many times people were like, why don't you buy a house?
Right.
I'm like, because that's a stupid, in my opinion. And I don't know if anyone here owns a home, but I was like, at that time, it was a stupid use of money, right? I was like, it makes no sense, first off. And second off, like, the rate of return on my business right now is insane. It would be ridiculous to take out money right now and buy a house. And then, it's always just doing what people tell you to do. I listen, but I choose what I want to do, right? Because I would rather be in control of my choices. And then I also saw the opposite. Like, my parents are not free, right? They took the route of, okay, the American dream. We're going to buy a house.
Yep.
We're going to max out the most we can buy a house.
Yeah.
Spend on credit cards. And then we're going to make a little bit more money, which means we can buy a bigger house. Right. And now my parents are still, they're not financially free. Right. Like, literally my parents now, when I was like, hey, like, I'm doing this, I just got rid of the business. Are you going to be okay? What are you going to do? I was like, well, like, nothing right now. Like, and it's so, and it's like, it's weird, it's this weird feeling, because it's like, hey, they're going to still have to work however long. Yet right now I don't have to, which is weird, because I chose a different path, right? And so, not listening, doing my own thing. And now people are starting, like you said, starting to ask, and people that I've been talking to for years, hey, let's meet, let's talk. And I'll do it. I'm happy to. I'm like, hey, yeah, like, let's talk. Here's what I know. And I never, I'm very big on not giving necessarily advice, and that's why I had to think a lot when you're like, hey, what's a piece of advice? I'm a big believer in here. I'll share my experiences. Here's what's worked for me. It may not work for you, or maybe it worked 5 years ago, but it's not applicable now. Whatever it is, I'll tell my experiences. And if you like it and you want to take some and apply it, great. But you need to make your own decisions, right? So, like, even when I work with you and I'm helping them with their business, right? And my coach does this for me. I'm like, look, I'll give you information. I'll give you an input. I'll give you a take, but you need to make the decision. Right? Like, you are the CEO of your own life and your own business and whatever it is. Make your own decision. And hell, or you ignore everything I just said. Be like, cool, I'm listening to this guy, but I'm going to do something else. Right? There's always multiple paths, and this is something you and I were talking about right before the call. Right? Like, we took two separate paths. One isn't better than the other. You went one way, I went another way. Both are fine. Right? Yep. It's understanding what options you want and what you don't want. I knew I didn't want to work until I was, 70. I probably still will work, but I never see it as work, right? It's like, I don't want to feel like I'm working, and I don't want to feel like I'm just in this, I remember growing up as a kid, it seemed just like an awful, miserable cycle. My parents would go to work, they would come home, we would eat dinner, and on the weekends it would be like their days off, and it would just continue year after year. And I was like, man, if this is all life is, this sucks.
Yeah.
Right? So I remember that from a young age, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do things different. And so maybe, had I grown up differently, maybe I would have taken a similar path to you. I don't know. I just knew I had to go against what I saw, what I grew up with, which meant the opposite. I think that was a big reason also why I was against getting a job, is because I saw, okay, my dad has a job. He's worked there for like 25 years. He does not seem happy. I'm going to go do the opposite. There could be great jobs, but I didn't know. All I knew was that. And I was like, I'm going to go that way. Right. And so, yeah, anyways.
What a risk, right? But it ended up working out. And, and of course your parents still love you, right? They're still going to care for you.
They do. We now talk again. It was hard for a while. They're very proud now. And initially enough, it's what a risk. I never actually saw it as a risk. I thought it was a risk if I went the other way. So that's what I think is also like, and you probably, I'm guessing you thought the same way. It's like once you started buying houses and you're doing all this, people are like, that's so risky. What are you thinking? To me, I was like, there's no risk at all. Like it's a win-win situation for me. Even if, I don't build this business, this one up to here, I won because I'm free. Like I was always winning. I want to always play a game where I can win no matter what. Even if I lose some money, I'm still winning because I learned or whatever it is. Play games that you're so convinced is going to be a win one way or another. I love playing those games. So that's how I live.
Amazing, man. Amazing session with you here. A good hour and 37 minutes we've spent so far. We can talk about this forever. You and I have gone on for hours, sometimes even half days, just talking. So just thank you so much for taking the time, especially at night, to come and meet with all of us and just tell us your story. What an amazing story. I'm going to drop an email to all of the mentees with Anthony's contact information after this. You guys can reach out to him. He's on Instagram. He's on Twitter. He's very active on both platforms. Feel free to reach out with any questions that you have for him about building your business. And I know, Anthony also has a program, a mentorship program as well. And I know he has tons of people in that program also that are looking to build and continuously building service-based businesses. So potentially look out for more information on that. And with that, that's our second webinar. So
having me, man. And anyone who reaches out, just mention this webinar or something. I do get quite a bit of messages, but if I see it, especially from this, I try to respond to anyone who messages me. But just put a note of like, hey, from the webinar, so I have some context, and message me either on Twitter or Instagram or when you follow up, you can give people my email or whatever. But yeah, reach out. Happy to answer any other questions that we unfortunately weren't able to cover due to time here.
Anthony, thank you so much, man. Have a great night. Keep kicking ass. I'd love to, maybe in the future we can talk about maybe getting again another session going where people can listen to your real estate venture and how you're transitioning into that. I know you're doing some multifamily stuff, so we'll talk more about it and keep everybody abreast of what's going on. Yeah. But thanks so much, man. Have a great night.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone.
All right. See you guys.
Right. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.